we'll also see what's available today and what's coming soon to really help us understand, how to build really, the truly native web applications that deliver the best user experience. I mean, this will be useful for front-end developers, especially who want to know, what's coming right in the world of web apps, and then, how do you integrate with underlying platforms? How do you build applications that work really fast and provide a great user experience? And to help us get our heads around this really, really interesting topic, we have, like I said, a really special speaker, Maxim Salnikov. Maxim is an Oslo-based cloud and tech community geek. He currently works as a developer advocate at Microsoft. He has been a web development professional who has been building apps since the end of the last century, and shares his extensive web platform experience by speaking and training at developer events around the world. His day job, obviously, is around boosting cloud skills at the country scale, where he's a lead developer engagement advocate at Microsoft Norway. And in the evenings, he is busy organizing some of the country's main web and mobile meetups, and also 2 full-scale tech conferences. So very busy person, very sought after as a speaker, widely followed. His Twitter profile, Twitter handle is also widely followed by a lot of programmers. So Maxim, with that, I think I'll have to just convey my excitement at having you do this webinar with us, and let's begin.
Hey, thanks for the intro, and thanks for inviting me. It's my great pleasure to present for your technical community. Let's talk about native web applications and where are we at the timeline of inventing how proper web applications should work and implementing our own projects. So today we'll first talk a bit about how do we want web apps to feel like, and as web developers, as web front-end developers, which tools do we have to achieve this state? I was already properly introduced, so I just want to say that I'm big fan of developer communities, developer meetups, developer conferences, and it's my great pleasure to share what I know myself about web development with my fellow developers, professional developers, young developers, junior developers. So I'll try to make this session relevant and interesting and useful for everyone. Please let's stay connected on social media. WebMaxRU, this is my Twitter, and I tweet mainly about today's topic, actually, modern web development, how to build proper web applications. Before we dive into technicalities, let's do some time hops. Let's pretend that we invented time machine and we go back to 1989. This year, there were at least 2 very important happenings in IT world. First of all, maybe not 100% relevant to today's topic, more just a fun fact. Microsoft Office version 1 was officially released, and even funnier that it was released not for Windows, but for Mac operating system. What's 100% relevant for this topic, it's the year when World Wide Web, WWW, was invented, and by the way, this is official logotype of World Wide Web, maybe not that known as 3W itself. And by the way, back to Microsoft Office, maybe it's quite relevant because maybe you know that some of the products part of Microsoft Office these days are actually progressive web applications. That means they are properly created web apps. So this is what happened in 1989. Web itself was invented like a web of hypertext documents could be viewed by the browsers. This is what's included in this official paper introduction of the web, and we'll return to this definition very shortly, right after we jump to nowadays. 2023 web platform is amazing. We have evergreen browsers, we have amazing tooling, all these IDEs, libraries, frameworks, UI components, design systems, everything that makes our life better, our life as developers. And we have a huge community of like-minded people, web front-end developers. There are millions of people who build web front-ends. That means that we can find help, support, and answers to our questions. At the same time, if we go back to definition of the web, let me go back to this slide. Yeah, web of hypertext documents could be viewed by the browsers, and basically it defines two main issues with the web platform these days. So first of all, it historically depends on always being online, because how can you interconnect these hypertext documents if you are not connected to the internet? And second, it exists within browser context only. I mean, what we build as web projects, web applications, websites, web pages is something that our users normally start as opening browser, typing some URL in the address bar, and only then seeing your application. So browser first, application second. And it's definitely something that we can improve and simplify and make web a better place to reason about what we build for web as web applications, not just web addresses or web pages. And next time hop, we go back for 8 years, June 2015. Actually, this is a time when progressive web apps as a concept was invented by Alex Russell. By those years, he worked for Google, but now he's my colleague in Microsoft, and he's still actively working on improving web as a platform. And this initial article about PWAs was exactly about escaping tabs, and of course this is about browser tabs. So escaping tabs without losing soul of web, its discoverability, linkability, openness, and the fact that it's everywhere on almost every single device. So this is how this idea was born. And back to our days again, is this still relevant? Is PWA still a thing in 2023 and 2024? As you see on this screenshot, this is a snapshot of Web Almanac, the project created by an organization called HTTP Archive, that creates actually kind of reports on different parts of internet. And let's wait for a report for 2023. It will be published in October. But for last year, we definitely can say that adoption of progressive applications is increasing. So more and more developers build their web front-end apps as progressive ones. They use service workers, they use manifests, and slowly this becomes kind of commodity in web development. So slowly we actually getting rid of term progressive because we make more and more apps progressive just by default. So why do we ever need to call them progressive then? Now, so it was just a, let's say, historical go through why this issue with web applications ever exist, and let's now try to come up with a few requirements. What do we as first of all developers and then users, we are all users of web platform ourselves, what do we really want from a web platform? How do we want our application to feel and look like? And of course, we don't have any compromises, any trade-offs when we talk about security and privacy. So no doubts, all apps should be as secure and as secure as possible, and follow all possible privacy rules, requirements, and agreements. Luckily, we have HTTPS these days, which is, I believe, de facto standard for hosting and deploying web applications. So I personally don't trust any address that starts with just HTTP without S. And yeah, it's again close to becoming just a standard in web development and web deployment. Then all things about performance. We cannot reason about native like web application that is slow and not smooth enough in terms of user interactions. And we have lots of tools as developers to create more performant web applications. Like DevTools is amazing these days, so we can check all the details where we can optimize our code. And JavaScript engines that are included in the browsers are also getting better and better from every version. So I don't think that performance is the main challenge. The real problems start from other things like persistence. For just an example, you open some address, some website, and then suddenly there is no internet. I don't know, you just lost your cellular connection, or Wi-Fi became Li-Fi, so it's kind of connected, but in reality not. Then you, for some reason, hit reload, like refresh the page, and what you see in many cases, you will see offline dyno, something about like server not found. But at the same time, you most likely see you have the files, the resources of this website, web application somewhere in your HTTP cache. But just because we didn't have enough control over how to reuse cache in a proper way as developers, we could not provide proper offline experience. Now we can, thanks to Service Worker API, we can build pretty fine-grained functionality to make our applications really offline friendly, offline first, offline ready. And what we focus on in this particular session is a bit more challenging to somehow measure, because it's mainly about like real feeling of the application. I call this nativeness. I'm not sure that this word ever exists in English dictionary. But yeah, actually this is a set of things that compile, that build this feeling. And I tried to at least categorize these things, so you better understand what I mean, and you better understand what you can implement as web front-end developer to have your application as native as possible for your dear customers and clients and visitors. First of all, it all starts with installation, right? Actually, even like one step back, it all starts with finding your web app somewhere on the internet, but it's not a challenge for web platform because we have search engines, and it's just a question of typing something in the address bar, either direct URL or some keywords, and yeah, your potential users will find your application very easily, way easier than, for example, using application stores if you talk about native applications for mobile devices. So there is no this extra step. They just type in the URL and they are in. And then how to let them know that this is not just a web address. This is not just a website. This is web application that they can install and use later. For example, when they are offline, or they can easily find this application as a shortcut on their desktop or home screen for this desktop or mobile devices respectively. And maybe they want to configure some items, how your application exactly behaves, and what do we as developers have in terms of improving launch of our application, make it more flexible, make it exactly like we want. Then we here talk about user-focused applications. So something that has user interface. That means that something that has to play the rules of underlying platform, like operating system and all hardware. So we always talk about some window dedicated for our application. And yeah, for example, this window could be full screen. So to create proper native-like app, we have to have full control over windowing. Then set of outbound integrations. What do I mean here? How our application can use some APIs of underlying platform, to be more precise, operating system, like without any kind of intermediate layers, without any kind of wrappers or plugins or whatever, just directly straight from JavaScript code. And vice versa, how the operating system can invoke our application in this or that way, maybe not regular one. We'll also go through this category. We can't reason about native like web applications without native notifications. I mean, we don't need to invent our own way to notify users about, for example, new messages available, or they can check in for their next flight. We have to use what operating system, what platform offers to us. So that's super important to have this functionality also in place. And for a bit more complex apps, that's a really good idea to leverage power of background tasks. For example, if you want to schedule something for the future, when our application might be closed and browser might be closed, but still we want to run some code. And also it's about dedicating some part of our application to separate thread to keep our UI thread as performant as possible. And last but not least, access to hardware. And here I mean direct access, also without any kind of wrappers, any kind of native plugins. No, straight from our JavaScript code. Okay, so we have these few categories, and we'll go through a couple of them with more or less details, and just briefly mention other ones. Get ready. And we have demo applications, demo application, it's one I created, first of all, for myself as a hobby DJ. And second, I actively use this as a sandbox for my experimentations with web platform, with latest and greatest features like cutting edge functionalities. You can easily find it on bpmtech.no, and of course, this is open source. You'll find full source code in GitHub repo. You'll find the link in the footer. Please feel free to explore, feel free to fork, feel free to send pull requests. I'll be super happy to receive your feedback about this application. And what I have as sample code in this slide deck, of course, it's very simplified. It's quite schematic. You can find all the details and all like extended code and real world project code in this GitHub repo. Okay, before we go, fasten your seatbelts. We are at the cutting edge of web technologies, so that's important to always have all experimental flags enabled in your browser if you really want to try latest and greatest functionality of the browser APIs and its connection with the platform. So it's very simple. You just go to Edge //flags or Chrome //flags if you use Google Chrome, and find everything that includes PWA in its name. There is a filter, and enable everything. And by the way, in this session, sorry, in 99% of the cases, I intentionally and explicitly do not mention what is available on in which browser, on which platform, which version of the browser, desktop or mobile, because of one reason, because it might change while I speak. So some of the functions are still experimental. Some of the functions will not land in the final standard. Some of the functions are going to production in the next version. Some of the functions are in canary version of the browsers, so it's hard to follow, and no need to follow, because we have progressive enhancement with feature detection as mitigation, as a salvation for us developers to always build the best possible user experience for this particular browser. This is as simple as it. Okay, now we are ready to go through the categories of nativeness I mentioned earlier. First of all, we go back to our requirements as developers of web front-end applications. We want to install, uninstall, configure our application, and launch it in different ways. What do we have for installation and launch from the browser side? What can we use? First of all modern browsers, at least the ones based on Chromium and plus Safari, they have some installation prompts. For example, in Chromium-based browsers, your users will find some subtle icon in the address bar that says that this application can be installed. Of course, if you built and deployed corresponding functionality, but I'll have a separate slide on that. Then they can also find something like install and name of your application in the main browser menu. It's a bit better or deeper hidden in iOS. That people have to click share, not click but tap share button, and then they will find the add to home screen shortcut there. But to sum up, majority of modern browsers have something to prompt users about this is not just a website, this is web application, and it can be installed. Then Chromium-based browsers have their own application hubs or application galleries. So the taxonomy is different, and it's still changing to find the best definition where your users where the browser users can find all previously installed applications. A bit more technical thing that there is experimentation about possible update of metadata of your application. For example, when you want to change name or icon of previously installed application. And about launch. When users install your application, they can now choose to run it on user login. This is at least available on Windows operating systems. And we have possibility to start our application in a non-regular way via shortcuts. Plus, we can control how exactly our users launch our application. Let's go through a few more details of these bullet points. First of all, about installation criteria. What do you need to have in your application to ever get this icon, like this prompt that this application is installable? So your users will get this prompt. Two criteria. First of all, properly corrected web application manifest. This is JSON formatted file that contains some metadata about your application, some, I will say, descriptions of your app and its behaviors, and service worker with at least one handler for event called fetch. So this is kind of our promise that application has offline support, that application is offline ready. Otherwise, why to ever think about this application, about something that users might want to install? So we definitely don't want to have just a like shortcut to web URL as installation. No, if we say installation, it's real installation. So that means that your application should be persisted and present on user device with or without user connection, online internet connection. This is an example of web application manifest. It contains all required plus few extra options that are really nice to have. Basically, this is all meta information about your app: name, description, and of course icons, because well, yeah, in the modern world, if we call something an application, it has to have a name and icon at least. And also latest experiments, latest browser updates also say that service worker is no longer a requirement, because browsers, at least Chromium based, they will provide their own offline default page. So this is very new feature, and I don't know will it be adopted well by users and developers, or still like it's a good idea to require something from the developers instead of just a default offline page. We'll see. The future will show. The future will tell. So if you follow these criteria, your users will identify this icon and tap it or click it, they will get set of dialogues. And this is how that looks for Windows 10 and Microsoft Edge browser. For different platforms, different operating systems, different browsers, these dialogues, they are different, and the wording is different because they are native for this particular platform. And furthermore, they are changing from time to time to find even better definitions, wording, explanation to the users about what is installable web application at all. But anyway, so if your users will click further, like install, they will get one more prompt where they can choose, for example, to run your application on system startup or user login. And then your app will take its place in the apps and features dialog of operating system. And yeah, here I talk about Windows. So this will look and feel and behave exactly like a native app. And bottom screenshot of the right section of this slide shows what I mentioned before: application hub, the special place in the browser, in Edge to be precise, where users see all installed applications. Okay, this is how people install and uninstall the applications. Now, what are the shortcuts? As I mentioned, this is a way to start your application, let's say not from the main page, but from particular page or from particular state. Maybe it's a better word. And for example, on Windows system, this is happening when users right-click your icon, as you see on my screenshot for BPM Techno. So I created extra shortcut called upload MP3 file. It's a bit inconsistent here, so I have to either update code or screenshot, because on screenshot it says upload audio file, a bit later version. But anyway, instead of launching application from its homepage, people will start it from URL called /upload MP3. This is a way to detect BPM of existing MP3 file. Yeah, this is very, very useful if you have some features in your application that you want to expose as like separate parts of your app without even starting its home screen. And again, this is a pretty well known feature of native apps, and this is why this is what I called native-like. So we have one more way to achieve exactly the same feature set as we might have as native app developers. And launch mode. As native app developers, we could decide what will happen if user will try to launch second instance of the application. So just imagine that you already have window with BPM Techno or any other installed application running, and you double click or tap icon again. Now you can choose as a developer what should happen. Either open completely separate new window or just refocus existing one. And also we can read parameters passed during the start. For example, when it was started via command line, read it in our JavaScript code and take corresponding decisions. Again, super flexible for us as developers. So that was about launch and configuration and installation. Next, windowing. We want to follow user experience principles of the platform and have control over every pixel. So we go back to how we exactly build user interface of our web front-end application. And we have few options to choose from. How do we want our application to look like? We control this via display property of web application manifest. We have few options to choose from: full screen, standalone, or with some minimal user interface. That means that browsers will keep back button. So maybe not all web applications are ready to be exposed as, let's say, browser frame-less experience. So maybe you need some time to resync your UI. In this way, minimal UI is a very good choice. And a set of newer options that you can use via next property called display override. So it's a bit confusing why there are two properties for controlling one thing, how the application looking like in the window, and it's just historical reasons. Display property was not very well introduced as a standard, as specifications. For example, the fallback order of these properties is hard-coded. It definitely doesn't provide enough flexibility for us developers. So the only solution, or like only viable solution, was to come up with newer property called display override, and all modern browsers will try to read what's in this property first. And of course, older browsers will just ignore this and will use display. So to sum up, in display override, you can use newer display modes. Minimal, it's a window control overlay or tabbed. And what is window control overlay mode? This is the mode when you can reuse title bar of the window. And here we go back to my statement, my requirement about having control over every pixel of this like rectangle we get for our application. So for example, you can put some controls like buttons or inputs or text or whatever straight into the title bar of the window, straight into this bar where, for example, minimize, maximize, and close icons are located. And as developers, we have quite nice flexibility on positioning or repositioning when our users resize the window via a set of CSS variables and corresponding JavaScript APIs. And last but not least, in this set of native-like features is display property called tabbed. This is the way where we want to, where we can organize multi-tab experience for our application. And in that case, we don't have to invent UIs or use any UI libraries for building these tabs. We use what browsers offer us. Actually, native browser tabs might be really, really useful for some kinds of the applications. And yeah, this is a bit more experimental feature. As you see on the screenshot, it's not very well implemented yet. So this titles doesn't work with each other, like main title and title of the tab. But I believe some improvements will go soon. Next category is what I call outbound integrations. We want to use all possible interfaces of the platform. What do I mean here? This is a requirement when we as web front-end developers want to invoke some native dialogues to achieve this or that feature in our application. Maybe the best illustration to this category could be Web Share API. When we call or invoke or request native dialogue for sharing something. It could be the link, like in my example, it could be sharing file, but the point is we just invoke native dialogue. We don't care how that looks, how that feels, because this is native and it's different for every operating system, for every platform. What we want to get is just, first of all, we want to pass some data and then want to get result. Was it successfully shared or not? Same idea is for picking contacts. All operating systems, all platforms have this or that implementation of address book, some database with contacts, and straight from our JavaScript code, bypassing all kinds of wrappers, plugins, whatever, we can call native dialog to pick these contacts, again, to get the data we want to get in our JavaScript code. And in Chrome on Android, this will look something like that, like you see on the screen. And last but not least, in this set of requirements is File Access API. A bit more serious, a bit more scary, a bit more, let's say, unexplored enough feature when you can invoke native, again, I emphasize all the time, native dialogues to either read or write files or like open directories. We have all respective APIs available in JavaScript. Of course, all security considerations are in place, and your users will have to explicitly agree that they give access to their file system to the to your application, and it's not all time permission, so it's session based. But yeah, if you want to check how that works, you just go to vscode.dev, and on this address you'll find the VS Code editor. I hope you use this, you love it, fully based in the browser. And then if you want to open some directory on your the desktop machine, you have to give permission, and exactly File Access API is in use for that functionality. So try that in action. And vice versa, inbound integration. We want the platform to invoke our application in different ways. What do I mean here? First of all, there is an option called URL handlers in Web Application Manifest, and it's all about explaining operating system and browser when to open installed application instead of just opening URL itself in the browser. And as you see in this example, it's a bit synthetic example. As you see, we can register not only our own origin here, where we actually host our application, but also some third-party origins. And when folks try to open partnerup.com, my application will be opened instead if it was installed. And of course, there is no way to hijack all possible URLs of the internet to make them all open your application, because as a third party, to kind of give permission to open some another application instead of your URL, you have to deploy a file called Web App Origin Association, where you quite explicitly provide information that, yes, I agree that my URL should open this application if requested. This is about when to open your installed application instead of address in the browser. Then next property of app web manifest that I want to explain is explain what happens if there is already a tab or application open very close to what we have in launch mode, but yeah, idea is the same. Either redirect to existing open tab or just start a new one. Furthermore, you can register your own protocol for your own application. This is what I've done for my example. I don't know why. Maybe it's overkill of functionalities, but I already mentioned that I use this BPM Techno as a sandbox, as a playground for all the latest and greatest features. So I just registered my protocol called Web plus BPM. So instead of HTTPS, people can open my application directly like that. So maybe this is more relevant for app-in-app experience rather than user-faced, but still a nice and interesting feature. Also, you can associate some file extensions on operating system with your web front-end application. So instead of opening native either player or audio editor, by providing file handlers option of web application manifest, this will open my BPM Techno application if that was installed. And yeah, of course, I can get all the information about what was passed as a parameter, as like list of the files that were used to start my application. And it's opposite to Web Share API, it's a Share Target API, where we register our own application as a target for sharing from other applications. So then just imagine that when folks invoke this native sharing dialog in the list of Messenger, email client, and some other social media apps, they will have your icon of your application, and if they choose to share something with your application, your app, if it was installed, will be invoked, and you as developer receive all data that was shared with your app. So, and then you decide what to do with this shared data. About notifications, now we can use what's called badging. This is nice way to provide overlay icon over installed application icon with, for example, number of unread messages, all like very well known feature of, for example, mobile devices, and many desktop devices also use this. Now we can use this for our web front-end apps. And of course, I wrote article about how to use badging as a part of 30 days of PWA project. You will easily find this on internet or on Twitter. So I encourage you to search for this project. Lots of interesting articles there. And web push notifications, it definitely deserves its separate session, this topic, but for now I can only say that this year web push notifications are coming in native form to iOS devices. So iOS 16.4, I hope that will be like released very soon. Now it's in beta version. You can try this as a beta tester, but I assume that later this year this will be released to all the users of iOS devices and iPadOS devices. So web push notifications are coming to Apple. That's really cool. This was one of the most famous blockers of implementation of PWAs. If you want to run some part of your application in background, for example, for scheduling, there is set of APIs available for you. I also have separate session on this, so we will not spend too much time here. I just want to say that in DevTools, there is a really nice and handy part of to test all these features, because yeah, as this involves some scheduling, some events that might happen or not, and might happen in some unpredicted time. Now you can record all these events for future debugging. And last but not least is direct access to the hardware. So here we just have a bunch of APIs available in Chromium-based browsers that give you direct access to lots of hardware features of the devices, again, bypassing all kinds of wrappers, plugins, whatever. Where to follow all these latest and greatest things? Fugu Tracker is my answer. On this website, you'll find what's coming, what's implemented, and links to corresponding explainers and specifications. And separate manifest incubations part of all the story is repository on GitHub. So there are 2 links. And by the way, I will ask organizers to share link to this slide deck later with all of you. So you'll get all code samples, all links in place. And also how to experiment with this latest and greatest features at scale. Of course, there is no need to ask all your users of your web application to go and enable these experimental flags in their browsers. It doesn't scale, but what scales is a feature of the browser called Origin Trials. Basically, you register your URL as target for this experimentation. You provide a couple of meta tags, and then all your users of this application will get access to this latest and greatest features. To finalize my session, I just want to list everything what we went through again, and yeah, now you can answer yourselves. Native web, are we there? For me, yes. For you, you give your own answer. Thank you very much. This is my Twitter. Let's stay connected. And I kindly ask organizers to say if there are any questions.
Hey, thanks a lot, Maxim, for a brilliant session. We've done several sessions on several topics, in fact, but this is the first time we've done something on native web apps, and it's really interesting because the whole thing about being able to leverage the power of the native operating system and build apps that blend in with the whole experience of the operating system. I think that's something very new for most of the people here on this call. So I have 3 questions. So the first is, are there any interesting use cases that you've seen where native web applications are being built? Can you name a couple of examples that you can think of?
Yeah, maybe let me start from Starbucks. They created a really great progressive web application instead of or I don't know, either instead or in addition to the native apps. So you can now track your rewards program straight in the browser without the need to install any native app. Then Twitter itself is PWA, so it has some offline functionality, and I assume this will be developed further. And Google Maps also is partially PWA, and contribution of the large companies to this topic says that, let's say, large businesses are very interested in building exactly progressive web applications or native web applications, how I call them. And of course, how could I forget about Microsoft, right? My employer. As I already mentioned, some parts of Microsoft 365, all this online office is progressive web apps, and also if you build application on Power Platform, like your Power App, there is just one single checkbox, make your application progressive, and if you check it, you instantly get offline ready installable application.
Great. Yeah, I think most users, like you said, may have been familiar with this as part of the Microsoft Office 365 apps already. And the second question is, if is more around learning. So, if I am a web developer, who has done a lot of traditional web applications like Spring Boot and uh, one of those typical Angular Spring Boot or React Spring Boot, how difficult is it for me? What's the learning curve? Is it steep? Is it okay?
Well, first of all, there is a mix of different things. So you mentioned Spring Boot, and this is about the backend, right? So what I introduced is mainly relevant for front-end part of the story. So if we focus on Angular, React, the learning curve is very natural, and so after my presentation, you already get some knowledge, and in this particular presentation, I focused mainly on the installability part of the application. So basically, 99% of functionality I introduced today, you can achieve by just deploying this web application manifest, this JSON file. So it's more like configuration rather than actual coding, but it's a bit more complex, of course, when we talk about offline part, like capabilities part. Then you have to learn a bit about service worker API, how to provide proper offline experience, and some parts of these APIs might be challenging, but at the same time, we have amazing library called Workbox that simplifies all these things, that converts a very imperative way to build offline experience to declarative, or just explain how you want to see this, instead of actually like coding line by line this behavior. So if you follow this way, this will be a very pleasant developer experience, and at the same time you can like in parallel, you can learn deeper and deeper about how that works under the hood. So I encourage you to start using libraries and like get your offline ready application in just one evening, and at the same time learn a bit about foundations of this. So if you know Angular, if you know React, then this is just a question of a few more APIs added to your tool belt.
Got it. And then the other question is around operating system compatibility. So what are some of the things that we need to keep in mind, if you're building apps that have to work on different operating systems?
Yeah, the answer is very simple: progressive enhancement. So try to implement as many features as possible. At the same time, keep in mind that pretty much all that I introduced today might not be available under particular circumstances, and it's not only about operating system. It could be a browser, it could be browser version, it could be browser settings. So progressive enhancement, this is when folks with the freshest browser will get the best possible experience. Folks that use older version of the browser, or not like latest operating system, they will get at least core experience. Like instead of just blank page, they will get at least something. And it's the question to us developers how we implement exactly this functionality.
Got it. Yeah. So I think with that, I think we are at the end of the session. So thanks once again, Max, for a brilliant session. Like I said, completely opens up a new window of opportunity as far as developers are concerned. So very, very interesting to learn this from you today. Thanks for taking the time to do it with us, and we hope to bring you back for another session sometime soon.
Deal.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day ahead. Bye.
Bye-bye.